mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, 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 there's too many of you dying. You know we got to find a way. Bring some love in today. My Father, we don't need to escalate. War is not the answer. Only love can conquer it. You know we got to find a way. You bring some love in today. Bring it light, bring it sign. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me, you will see. Yeah, what's going on? 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 Mother, they are thinking we are wrong. Who are they to judge us just because our hair is long? You know we got to find a way to bring some love in today. Big lights, big signs. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me, you will see. Yeah, what's going on? What's going on? Hey, what's going on? Yeah, what's going on? Hey, what's going on? What's going on? Hey, what's going on? Hey, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Yeah.
So the program that we have for you lined up, we're going to have 3 artists interviewed at a time. Santa Barbara is a nonprofit organization where we get together to do public exhibitions at downtown Santa Barbara. And we also do social mixer get-togethers and attend workshops and go to museums and galleries. The first set of interviewers are Morgan Green, are Jan Baker, Elizabeth Flanagan, and Mary Freericks. So I'm going to start out just with my art and then go to the questions of the others. The first one that you're looking at is called Dreamer. And it was inspired by the migrants coming from Venezuela, and I felt like my heart needed to say something non-political, but more that we're looking at a child, and it's a story of families coming for hope and better, leaving terrible conditions and looking for hope in America. So one of the things that inspired me is, as I do portraits, I'm known for doing portraits most of my life, but I can capture personality. Usually it's if I know the person, and take photos of them, but I've done all kinds of things, and this is just from an actual photo that was in the news that captured me, and it looked so creative that I wanted to do it. It only took me 3 days, and a part of it is that as I get into it, that's probably where I spent most of my days and nights just doing it, because my heart was involved, and it is where you can see the expressions of them. It's a story of a family and kindness. When you start doing portraits, you look at their eyes, you look at their facial expressions, and there's just a comfort with this little girl and trusting her father. And he has very, very kind facial expressions. The second one that I did to complement that was more of a story of a mother and a child. And this is a child that's a little bit older, and she has a more worried look. She's more aware of what's going on, which has to do with Tina and Joel's song. And as I finished it, I realized she's carrying the most important thing in her life. She's carrying a child, her child, and she's also carrying her culture with her. The only thing that she can carry are the shawls that she's wearing. So I spent a lot of time just to finish the photo and the pastel with the design of her shawl that she's wearing, and people have complimented me on just this particular picture that made a difference. And then this one is where I did a study on gold shine and different types of gold metal for still life. I started painting in my 20s following David LaFell, who's an abstract realist artist, and his counterperson, Daniel Green. And I was fortunate enough to take workshops from them. They are who I follow, and he's influenced me the most. And so you can just I'm not at the level that he's at, but someday I think it's just a journey in art that you enjoy your art and become more skilled. Last one I'm showing is a little bit different. And luckily, they are in their 80s. Still, Dana Green passed away, but David LaFell is on Facebook on Sundays. And the people that Santa Barbara visual artists set up workshops from LA. Regina Lyubanova is the master artist considered under David LaFell. And Chloe Nguyen, who comes from the San Francisco area, is considered the master artist that studied under Daniel Green. So somehow I feel so fortunate to be in Santa Barbara with this group of artists that are Santa Barbara visual artists, but also to have the workshops that I'm studying with. So the next person that we're going to pull up is Elizabeth Flanagan.
Hello, everybody.
I have a question for you.
Can I just say first, thank you for having this event, Jan. And I just really want to thank you for being at the cutting edge, innovative in this field in the art world in Santa Barbara. You're the first person I've done a Zoom interview with, so there.
Well,
I thank you, and I know you're learning as you go, but you're very good. You're very gutsy out there, so thank you so much. It's a great opportunity for us.
I think it is a learning curve for all of us, and I really appreciate everybody that's in our group. I'm getting to know you so well by doing our pop-up galleries on State Street in our public venues, but I really have a artist's love for everyone, and especially you. So I'd really like to ask you this question. What inspires you most to paint?
Well, thank you. People inspire me most to paint. Like with you, you were inspired by the people and the emotion in them and their lives. And that's how I am, but my style is very different than yours. I'm not realistically driven. The first one is of Lincoln. And he's always an inspiration to me. I've done many portraits of Lincoln. And this is Lincoln for the people, because I feel like that's what our democracy is about. I love we started with the song, What's Going On? And I love your work that you showed. And I'm in the same vein of, we have to guard our democracy. We really have to, it's special, it's important, and it's a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And Lincoln's words always come to me and always move me. So I did this portrait of Lincoln and I use vivid colors, bright colors, and it worked out. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And so that's what inspires me are people mostly. And politics, the political situation going on, that certainly inspires me as well.
Wonderful. I've admired one of them that's not on, and that is RGB. Um, oh no, RBG.
RBG, yeah, the initials are always,
Yeah.
people struggle with them.
And that is a statement also of influencing us as who you're choosing to paint during this day and time.
She's a major heroine for me, and I know for a lot of people. I've gotten that feedback from a lot of people, and I actually sold that painting at the show that we had, that visual artists had down at the gallery, with the pop-up gallery. That painting got sold at RBG to a lady from LA, which was thrilling.
Congratulations. I can understand why. So tell us a little bit about this one, and what are the artists you most admire?
This painting was inspired by Greta Thunberg. Now I know it doesn't look like her necessarily, but it was painted from being inspired by her. And I love her because she's so young, 15, 16, 17, and she takes a stand for the environment, and she's inspired thousands, hundreds of thousands of people all over the world, especially young people, to stand up and to take some action. And I'm looking out at the sky up here today, and it's very scary. It's a yellow sky. Yes, I see people nodding. If you're here in Santa Barbara, the Central Coast, the last week has been apocalyptic looking. So I'm more than ever inspired by the climate activists. And I came late to that, but I'm waking up to it and the need for action to be taken on our parts. And again, you know, the color, with this particular painting, I was playing with a limited palette. So I was only working with orange, red, and black. And there's a bit of yellow in there too, but mostly orange, red, and black. And if you mix black with orange, you get a brownish tone, and red with black, you get a brownish tone. And so it was a lot of fun to play with it and just see what could happen with a limited palette. And so that's what emerged from that. So that's dedicated to Greta. It's called Post-Millennial Eve, because a friend of mine said she looked like a modern earth woman, a modern keeper of the earth, or caretaker of the earth. So we called it Post-Millennial.
It's beautifully done, and I like the colors that you used also. I can see everything that you did with your technique. So the next one I'm going to ask you is, how would you describe your style?
My style, I've been told by other people, there's two particular schools people put me in. One is the Faubs, which was a branch of the French Impressionists, which Faub translates from French as wild beasts. And that has to do with the color being like the primary focus of it. And instead of trying to get it representational, it's expressing your feelings, your passion, your sense of a person through color and bold lines. I really like lines and color. And I did this mostly with a palette knife on a canvas board. And it's really inspired by Toni Morrison. Again, though it doesn't really look like her, but she's a writer who really inspires me. And there's this great photo of her on a New York Times cover where she has her dreadlocks and a bandana. So she's making a statement, and she's older. This is in her later years, so she really was putting herself out there. And I just love the photo. It's beautiful. So I was inspired by that to do this.
Yes, and I've met Toni Morrison. I've gone to her in Minneapolis when she was
You're
first.
kidding. Oh my God.
So I appreciate this one in particular, and I do like her writing and poetry as well.
Yeah.
Here's your last one. A little bit about it?
Okay, I'd be happy to tell you. Again, another school people have put me in is the German Expressionists, which is similar to the Faubs because it's a use of color and strong lines to express emotion rather than getting it representational. So this is Saint Mary Magdalene, who is an inspiration for me spiritually, and a woman who is misrepresented from the Gospels as like prostitute, but really they're coming to know that she was the apostle to the apostles. So who was she really, and what impact did she have? So I'm doing a course on that right now. I'll be starting the end of September, and I'm really excited. So that's kind of given me the impulse to start painting her again. I painted her a lot about 10 years ago and then went away. And recently I found the card I was using. So I'm inspired to paint her again. And again, it's a limited palette, oranges, some greens, you know, yellow and black make green, orange, you know, and black makes a brown. And then there's some red in there. So it's a lot of, it's so exciting. I feel so privileged to be able to do art.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's always important to take time to talk to the artists, especially at the receptions, and you learn so much more about your artwork. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jan, again for the opportunity. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Our next artist for the first set is Mary Freericks. Mary, can I have you say hello?
Hi, and welcome. I'm happy. I've been in a number of virtual art shows, and I actually was fortunate enough at the Scape one, which was held for the Maritime Museum, to sell my oil painting of a pelican. So that was exciting, sell virtually. And when the lady came to pick it up, she really brightened when she saw the real thing, which was good for my heart.
Yeah.
Now, thank you, Jan, and thank you, Elizabeth. These are some faces. I work in a variety of mediums and a lot of different styles. I enjoy color, and I've been told my paintings usually express joy. So this started with cutting out a jelly print for the face, and then I used some rice paper, and it just came out kind of like a mask. And so it's had some glue and collage as well.
Well, Mary, it's so nice to have you. I appreciate everything that you do as an artist, and I've had the opportunity to look at a lot of your art, and then you're also writing poetry and books and doing
yes, and I've given a couple of virtual readings through the Carpinteria Art Center on my latest book, which is First for a Vegetarian, about my mother and myself starting in Russia, going to Iran, and then coming to the United States.
Well, the first question that I have for you is I understand you work in a variety of mediums. What medium do you prefer?
I started with watercolor, which I love very much, but then I moved on for a while to collage and oil. And I, at that time, well, maybe a few years later, did yes, oil and figure drawing, of course, is charcoal. And then I went on to acrylics, which I used to not like, but now I do a lot of acrylics. So we change our taste and whatever happens to us sometimes. But I enjoy different mediums, whatever works at the time. And sometimes I mix with charcoal and other mediums as well. This one, with the COVID, I've been painting fairy tales. That's going into escape and enchantment. And this one is a fairy tale done. I don't know if any of you have ever taken a Xerox and put something like acrylic medium on it and glued it to a canvas and then pulled it off. Well, I did that on this one and another one you'll see, but it didn't come out. It was a fox. And as you can see, you see the black interesting patterns. And that was my fox. And so I decided to go into the fairy tales and have the knight in shining armor and the lady in love with him and the clowns looking at them and the griffin. And there's even a bat, but he's pink. So that's certainly mixed media.
Well, that ties into your second question, is how did you come up with the design? And this is something that you just currently did over the summer, right?
I did that maybe a month ago. It's very recent.
Okay. So your third question is, what can you tell me about the work of art and what you're focused on now?
Well, if you show this one, I had just showed you the book, and this started with my gluing the Xerox, and her dress is the Xerox, at least the bottom of her dress. The rest is old paint, starting with her waist up and the man behind her. And these happen to be handmade dolls my mother made. And so it was exciting to me to reproduce them on canvas. And I used acrylic, and then I decided to put them inside a castle. And that's where we are. The actual dolls are behind me in a cabinet.
And so what did you call this? Title?
I think I called it Dolls. I don't remember, frankly. If you raise it up, the title, I think, is underneath. So
I think it was Medieval Dolls. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
So anything else that you wanted to mention about, there's one more, it would be called The Light.
This was on thin rice paper, and I used a little gold on the lion. That's why it's so kind of brilliant, shining. And I just love animals, especially furry ones, and the cat family is my favorite. So anything to cheer me up right now. These are all.
I think that's the grace that we have as artists, is that we are able to focus on our art. We've had a lot of our artists that have done environmental issues or art that addresses what's going on in 2020. And eventually we'll get to talk to Karen about their work on the environment. Thank you so much for joining us. And
Thank you, Jen.
I enjoy having you as a dear friend. Thank you. So our second song that we're going to in series is Harvest Moon by Neil Young and Joel and Tina singing. Again, they've sung for a lot of our public exhibitions on State Street. And the next three artists that you'll hear from are Morgan Green, Karen Haub, and Carissa Luminess. So I'd like to call for song 2, Harvest Moon.
It is September. It's time to enjoy a nice harvest moon.
Come a little bit closer, hear what I have to say. Just like children sleeping, we could dream this night. There's a full moon rising, let's go dancing in the night. We know where the music's playing, let's go out and feel the night. Cause I'm still in love with you, I wanna see you dance again, because I'm still in love with you on this harvest moon. When we were But now it's getting late, and the moon is climbing high. I wanna celebrate, see it shining in my eye. 'Cause I'm still in love with you. I wanna see you dance again, because I'm still in love with you. On this harvest moon. Because I'm still in love with you. I wanna see you dance again, because I'm still in love with you. On this harvest moon.
Well, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. So the next person that I'm introducing is Morgan Green. Hi, Morgan. It's so nice to have you.
Oh, it's so great to be here with everybody.
Your artwork, I so appreciate. I met you at the Mesa Studio Tours years ago. I mentioned that artists this year, starting in March, have used art to express themselves, and it's in many different mediums and styles. And you have a particular one, and it is where you go out into nature and capture nature. And I think a lot of us just started going out and walking and then coming back in to do our art. But the first question I've got for you is, why do you paint mostly California landscapes?
Oh, that's pretty easy to answer. For one, this place is gorgeous, and it's so varied. You can go from palm trees on islands such as Catalina all the way up to high Sierra glaciers and snow. What's not to love about anything in between? The high deserts, the oak woodlands, and on the backside of the Sierras, you've got the aspens and the scrub oaks and the cliffs like the Rocky Mountains. The variety is so huge, I think it's impossible for me to ever be bored with anything. If I do feel like I'm fenced in or getting tired of doing this or that scene around Santa Barbara, all I have to do is drive an hour or so in any direction, and there's a whole new world out there for me. But there's practical reasons and spiritual reasons as well. Practically speaking, a lot of people visit here, and they come to Santa Barbara from all over the world. And many, many times, people want to take a little bit of our reality, our home back with them. And I find that many buyers of landscape art in our area are not only residents, but a lot of visitors that just want to take home the feeling of this place and the palette of this place, and have wonderful memories. So I keep that in mind when I'm doing pieces. I usually control that by size. You know, a lot of people want a piece of artwork that will fit in their luggage. So a lot of my works will. And I do that deliberately because I could paint as big or a little as small as I wish. But I do find that that's helpful for people. The other reason I paint landscapes in California is that we spend so much of our lives in the human realm of necessarily, and we love our comforts and are very grateful for everything we have. Yeah, for me personally, I'm an outdoors woman. I like hiking and climbing, and I race sailboats, and I go to the islands a lot, and I'm out and about. And for me, getting away from the realm that's built by human beings is very important to give me a perspective, give me a spiritual perspective on what is and is not important. I think sometimes we can get all too caught up, unfortunately, in things that appear to be so vital and meaningful, but just stepping back gives us a little bit of peace of mind. So I'm hoping that the paintings I bring to people convey those moments of peace of mind and contemplation and easiness and calm that you can get out there if you just stand still.
That's beautifully stated, and it definitely shows in your artwork. I appreciate it so much, and I think that during this period of time, 2020, it is where more of us have gone out to find what's important in life, and a part of that is the meditation, and then capturing what you've done with your art, the beauty of nature. So your second question is, why do you prefer to use pastels?
Well, I started out with acrylics, and then I moved to oils, and then I moved on to pastels, and I love all of them. I really gravitated toward pastels when I was in Venice, of all places, and saw a portrait of one of the old Venetian doges, their leaders. It was about a 450-year-old portrait, and it looked almost new. So I thought about that and asked some questions, and over time I have learned that pastels, being pure pigment, a lot of people think they're chalk, and they're not. They're pure pigment, the same pigment that goes into oil paint or watercolor. Because they're pure pigment, you're using direct pigment, so they're not mixed with much of anything else, and they have these remarkable ability to show color in such a marvelous way. The other thing I really like about them is that they're tactile. You hold a pastel in your hand, in your fingers, and they look like pieces of chalk. They can be various shapes depending on the maker. And how you use your hand, how you bring them onto the canvas, how you manipulate the stick of pastel has a lot to do with getting into the art. I mean, it's just wonderful. I don't have to wait and mix color and load a brush and mix color again and then paint with a brush and then mix color again. I got really tired of mixing with oil paints, although that was how I learned to create color out of the primaries, and I'll always be grateful for that. But pastel for me is almost like sculpting with color. And I come away with dirty fingers, which I like.
That's wonderful. What influences have inspired your work? And I noticed that you've got the other one back, but I'll just blow it up for a while, and then I'll go back to the other ones as you're talking.
Sure, that's the one I also have up behind me. This is a scene I just did a week and a half ago up in Cayucos, north of Morro Bay.
Yeah.
And my sister and I were just walking out on the bluffs, and this was when the sun was very, very low. So everything was tinged with this peachy color, and that's what I've been trying to capture there. The influences that have had most of an effect on me are pretty much all American. Although Maynard Dixon, 19th and 20th century American artist, was not an impressionist, I consider myself an impressionist in style and also an interpretive realist. I'll take real things and I'll interpret them a bit, but I don't really try to alter things terribly. I do alter paintings as much as any artist does, but I'm trying to depict the real world as it is. And Maynard Dixon and Edgar Payne were contemporaries in the 19th and early 20th centuries, and they were famous for their Western landscapes and their Western people, the huge vistas and the if you will, pastel colors. They were able to convey this enormous land where I've called home. I'm a Western person. If it's west of the Mississippi, I'm more familiar with it. But a lot of people will remember Maynard Dixon and Edgar Payne for their style. It's called Precisionist. That's not me, but Precisionist was, people will remember when there were posters that the railroads had all over the United States to get people to ride the railroads and go out west. They had precision lines and bright colors. And these posters, we became very famous. And that's Maynard Dixon and Edgar Payne, or mostly Maynard Dixon. But they caught this size and expanse of the West that I love. Now, a living artist that I owe a lot to is a man called Kevin McPherson, and he's an oil painter based in the mountains of Taos in New Mexico. Of course, he travels all over the world. And his book was one of the original inspirations for me to get into art. And if anybody's interested in what's going on in American art today, and one of America's best art teachers, it's Kevin McPherson. He actually did a little book of 1,000 pages of the scene in the mountains of his little mountain home up above Taos, of a little pond and some trees and a mountain beyond. And he painted the same scene 1,000 times at different days and different times of days. And it was just this amazing art. So he has definitely been an inspiration.
It's wonderful to have you on this program. I've always appreciated your artwork. And when we do have those tours again, be sure and stop in and see Morgan Green's art at the Mesa tours.
We'll have one as soon as we can.
Yes, I have it on the calendar, just waiting for it. Thank you, Morgan.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure.
I'm calling Karen Haub forward. Karen, thank you so much for being our web designer and being such a strong support during this time where we're doing our exhibitions, and to also have Meet the Artists, where ask questions when they go to public exhibitions, as well as you would appreciate hearing from them by email or going to your websites that you have. So what motivates you to start a new piece of artwork?
Several things motivate me, but I would say the top two things are a love of the environment, appreciation for the environment, and wanting to really pay tribute to nature. It inspires me. There's nothing that brings me peace of mind more than being able to go out on a hike and see the way the light is changing and falling through the leaves, and look up at the mountains. And so painting is a way for me to be fully present in that feeling. The other thing that inspires me to start painting on a piece like this one, which is a collaboration piece, it's an environmental impact piece that Lynn Dodge and I worked on together. And Lynn is a found object artist. She's fabulous. And she works with all things that she finds around, just scouting down the beach or in junkyards or scrap. So she upcycles resources and for her paintings. And she and I got to talking about the environment, and I was getting very emotional about some of the situations that we are facing, that our children, that our grandchildren are going to be facing in the future, regarding the destruction of our environment. And she told me about an article that she had read about a place called Cancer Alley, which is in Louisiana along the Mississippi River, between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. And there are hundreds of petroleum distillate plants and various plants that manufacture chemicals that are spewed into the environment. And the people that are living in the parishes along the Mississippi River are subjected to inhalation of these toxic chemicals constantly. And they're too poor to move, they can't move out, and corporations continue to build these. And it turns out that along that strip of land along the Mississippi River, there is a really, really high incidence of cancer. and people are dying because they can't afford to move, and then these corporations are continuing to build the plants. So Lynn and I discussed it, and we wanted to do a piece that reflected what's happening there, and it's called River of Forgotten Sorrows. And so the cogs in this piece represent the cogs of industry, and the pillars you see are representative of smokestacks. And you can see the air, the quality of the air just gets worse and worse as your eye goes toward the top. And I felt like this piece was successful in that it draws the viewer in because it's beautiful and interesting, but then it kind of makes you think. And that's one of the things that motivates me to do art too, is that I hope that some of my artwork can be considered a call to action for things that really make you think about how we as human beings are affecting the environment around us.
Well, I appreciate that. I had a note about Lynn Dodge and you doing an environmental series, and I hope that someday that's just a private exhibition. That's such quality work that you work together with your inspiration, making a statement about the current world and affairs and things that touch your heart. So how do you hope viewers will respond to your artwork?
Well, when I painted this particular piece that's in front of you right now, it was right after the pandemic started and we all went into sequestration, and the world became very silent. It felt like going out into the streets, there were fewer cars, going out anywhere. There were no people, and everything got so quiet. And this is called Season of Silence, and I wanted to portray moodiness and a little anxiety because as a mixed media artist, I like to use a lot of texture in my work. And so the blues obviously are sort of moody, representing our collective grief and anxiety over what we're going through right now, what the world is going through. And then the scribbles, there's some scribbles that are, you can see them in this is a great shot of them, that I did in charcoal that kind of are meant to represent anxiety. And I know that I've definitely had moments of absolute grief and anxiety, and just I'm hoping that this all ends soon, but then knowing that oftentimes there's stillness in nature that's very inspiring. So I hope that that we can take that stillness that we're experiencing and try to find a peaceful place with it. And I feel like I get that out of this piece. I actually really enjoy having it hanging in my home, although it is for sale.
This is one of the series that also goes with the environment that Lynn and you did. And my final question is, what are your thoughts on how the art world has had to respond to the global pandemic? And how do you think that will affect the future of the art market?
Well, it's really great for me, for Lynn and I's environmental impact pieces in one way, because I feel like doing these talks with the artists and putting them out on the web is a great way to reach a wider audience with a message. And I think it's a wonderful way for people who love to go to art receptions but happen to work a lot, or maybe can't get away, or can't get to a reception that's in another city or state. This is a great way to bring art to everyone. So I think that this is really a wave of the future, and I really applaud you for embracing the courage to embrace this and give it a try, and understanding that there's going to be some glitches, as we go along. But I think you're doing a great job, and I think this is really a wonderful opportunity to expand our knowledge in technology and just move forward in the art world, expanding our viewership and possibly our clients as well.
I think that was one of the main reasons was we knew that everything was closed and our life was changing, and to look at an avenue and what would be next for this year for our artists, and therefore it pushed us to go with you, especially creating a beautiful new look for our Santa Barbara visual artists, and it had such high compliments on it. But then the second thing is to how do you expose the artwork more and that was accomplished by adding more pages, where what we did accomplish in 2020 was that JCC exhibition in June, and then the actual Santa Barbara Tennis Club exhibition where 6 pieces sold. And it's been a positive thing. We're all moving forward with the art, and I really appreciate you as a dear friend. So thank you.
Thank you.
Our next artist and last in the second set is Carissa Luminess.
Hi there.
Hi, Carissa. So nice to have you.
It's nice to be here. Thank you, Jan.
It's so wonderful to take time to learn more about your art. So I have a question for you. What role does spirituality play in your painting practice?
Many roles. It's actually, I first got into painting as a healing practice, and it wasn't intentional. It was just that painting was the only thing that really grounded me and helped me recover from really bad trauma early on in life. And I had an experience when I was 5 of looking into the face of a pansy, and the flower became illuminated and alive, and the beauty of that touched something inside of me that allowed me to access my own divine beauty. And so that moment was kind of a transformative moment in my life, which led me to a path of being able to access my divinity by painting the beauty of flowers. And it was really my saving grace. Eventually, my path as an artist turned into one of a journey towards self-realization. And I think, I've been painting my whole life now. It's been my career. And along the different stages of my journey, it has served different purposes. But at a most basic level, when you're painting, you're really in the moment, And so that's kind of the basis for mindfulness or spiritual awareness or consciousness. So just the pure act of painting, just really puts you in the moment and allows you to be here now. But also, I think by experiencing the beauty of nature and adoring it, and to me, it's almost like a devotional act of making a prayer. Like each painting is a prayer and a devotional act of gratitude and thanks to the Divine Mother.
That's beautifully stated. Thank you. One of the things that came to mind is, what is the healing benefit of painting?
Well, I think it goes hand in hand with what I just said, but again, on a most basic biological level, color therapy. I mean, color itself is so healing, and just working with colors, looking at colors, mixing colors, blending colors. And I think just to create is healing. I mean, we come from the creative source. And so when we are creating, we are one and the same with that divine energy again. So that in itself is healing. And then when we go through a process of this healing, transcendent kind of experience in our painting, that energy comes through in the work and can affect the viewer so that when they see it, they become elevated and uplifted. And, it can really it can really literally be a mood elevator to be exposed to art that has been done, that healed the artist. That energy comes through and can heal the viewer.
That's something too, that each viewer or art appreciator chooses their art and is drawn to it for what they see and uplifts them in their home. So thank you.
Yeah.
Third question I have is, why did you start teaching art in your later career?
Well, I had painted professionally for 35 years and had really reached a point where it just, there was something missing. It just felt kind of empty. It was no longer enough for me just to be in my zone of this blissful state, even though I felt like I was aware that my paintings were bringing a lot of joy to other people. There was a deeper calling in me that wanted to share this magnificent process that I've been able to live during this lifetime and expose people to this kind of healing spiritual journey that art can bring. And so as the universe does, it conspired to bring me a position with Santa Barbara Adult Ed. I started teaching there a few years ago. And it came to me, actually. The director had seen that I had a coloring book and asked if I could come up with a class around a coloring book. So my first class was watercolor as meditation and relaxation. And it was based on my coloring book. And then that led to more and more classes. Now I'm teaching 5 classes at Adult Ed, and it turns out, we've been on Zoom now since March, and it turns out that I've been able to just give an incredible gift. I have 150 students now, and to help them access this process of painting as a way to express themselves, to heal, to move through things, to practice taking risks in the studio that they can then build trust in themselves and, follow their intuition to take more risks out in the world, which we're having to do now with this drastically changing world, has been incredibly satisfying. Way more satisfying than even, having a successful career as a painter. So it's been a wonderful privilege that I get to share this with so many people.
Well, it's a privilege to have you in our group, and the fact that you are giving the gift. And I guess that's the best statement to express what artists do. They share and they give the gift that they've learned along the way. So I'm so glad that you're teaching at SBCC. My last question for you is, what is the mental effect of art on society?
Well, I think we can just reflect for a moment on the artists who we've heard today and seen their paintings. And it doesn't take much to notice how artists really have their finger on the pulse of the culture and on society and what's happening. And they put into visual form and symbolism what the collective is experiencing. And it can really help us become more conscious. It can help us release you know, tension. It can help bring healing. I mean, art does a number of things. It can, like with Karen's work, it can bring awareness to the environmental degradation and what needs to happen. With Morgan's work, it can bring you to a place of just appreciating the light coming through the trees on a hike. You know, Mary's fairy tales and going into archetypal storytelling is another way of just helping offer a different perspective and perhaps solutions, and to just expand our consciousness about the human experience.
Thank you, Carissa. It's so nice to have you a part of us this evening. And everyone go to the sbvisualartist.com website. There's more of her work there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan.
And that's going to bring back for song number 3, and that would be Joel and Tina.
This one's about a lady who just wants to have some fun.
Wow. Good. We do need that. We do.
Sometimes we just need that. All right. From Joni Mitchell.
Last night I couldn't sleep. Oh, you know, I sure as I leave here, but it's really not my home. My fingernails are filthy. I got beach tar on my feet, and I miss my clean white and my fancy French cologne. Oh, Carrie, get out your game. Now put on some silver. You're mean all that, but I like you. Come on down to the Mermaid Cafe, and now I buy you a bottle of wine. And we'll laugh and taste of nothing and smash our empty glasses down. Let's have a round for these friends and these soldiers, round for these friends of mine. Let's have another round for the great great deal that keeps me in this tourist town. Oh, Carrie, get out your cane. Now put on some silver. You're mean on that, but I like maybe I'll go to Amsterdam, maybe I'll go to Rome, and rent me a grand piano and put flowers round my room. Let's not talk about very well. The night is a starry dome, and they're playing that scratchy rock and roll beneath the night moon. Oh, Carrie, get out your game. Now put on some silver. You're mean on that, but I like you. Wind isn't from Africa. Last night I couldn't sleep. Oh, you know, I sure as I lay, but it's really not my home. Fingernails are filthy. I got beach tar on my feet, and I miss my clean white and that fancy French cologne. Oh, Carrie, get out your game. Now put on some silver. Go to the Mermaid Cafe for the night. I said, oh, you're a mean old daddy, but you're out of sight.
We're at the last 3 sets of artists that we're going to interview. We just heard Carrie by Joni Mitchell and with Joel and Tina. The artist interviewers are Rebecca Martyr, Robert Voorhees Jr., Patricia Watkins, and we're ending with a beautiful song that's so appropriate, Gravity with John Mayer. And then the last 15 minutes, we'll pull all the artists up for you to, the audience, to ask questions. Rebecca, next.
Hi, everybody. First of all, I want to thank the musicians.
Yes.
That was so awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I'm from a family of musicians and artists, and I know how musicians work too.
Well, we're very fortunate because they always bring the livelihood and the party to the reception, our public receptions. And then they're so gracious to be a part of this that it just makes it an occasion and a reception. So Rebecca, thank you for being a part of this group that's being out there and daring. How did you decide to be an artist?
Well, I think a lot has been said, about nature and the quiet. I'm one of 10 children, and I was I'm right in the middle, very chaotic. And I found such solace and healing and peace, and mostly I learned to connect with myself instead of connecting with everybody else and what they needed. And so I think there was there was a real, like Carissa said, a little bit of trauma that I was unconsciously healing as a child. I just started doing art, and then I studied. I started taking art classes, and in college I studied psychology, Jungian psychology. So I incorporate that into my work as well.
Why do you add collage to your works?
Oh, let's see. So I think, like a lot of us are saying, we're so inspired by nature. And I often see, nature is so exquisite and so perfect. It's like, why do we even do art? But I realize that, as I guess we all do, we're not just copying what we see, we are doing our interpretation of it. And for me, I noticed that I abstract it. And one of the things I do with my artwork is I find the opposites, like nature versus commerce or man-made, or even, cities, and how these sort of Jungian archetypes, shadows and light, they compete for space in a way, and Elizabeth and maybe Carissa have been pointing to as well, how nature is just really fighting for its vitality here. And it's, kind of a scary time. And I didn't realize, like this first piece that you showed, that we all we've been living in great times and we didn't even know it, right? Mm-hmm. And today there's a lot of conversation about politics, and I think the environment needs to come to the front of the conversation. Otherwise, we're going to keep having these, Mother Nature roars that are pretty eerie and traumatic and affect us. But again, it's similar to art. It brings us back to ourselves. Somehow this whole COVID-19 has brought us to go inside more and appreciate just the little things. Like when my internet goes out, it's like, okay, I'm not meant to be wired up here. I'm meant to go out and be in gratitude and in nature, and painting and doing my art and collaging and adding imagery that it just stimulates me to have it kind of come from, as much as it's from nature, it's from within. So collage kind of helps me in a funny way. I don't know if it's just to be unique and have my own self-expression and my own signature on my art, but I totally kind of mess it up a little, you know? So you can see that with, well, this one maybe, but the tree one, yeah, that one. Like trees are such a symbol of life and wisdom and power and prosperity. And this is my example of, this is my interpretation of trees. So, yeah.
What is your favorite part of making art?
I think it's, again, what a lot of us are pointing to. It's just that meditation, prayer, just that zone that we get into. I think I've been in my life, like I'm one of 10 children, and then I had 4 children, and I had restaurants, and I was just busy, 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 busy. And I think that doing art is just such a centering, grounding. I learned, you know, trusting myself and just connecting with myself. And I just love that. Like getting out of my head and how I think it should look, and just having courage to just kind of be me.
And it ties to where we are by nature. We knew that we were to do art in our lives, but more importantly, I think art is part of the community. And so even during this time, we're missing that part, and I'm worried about our galleries and our museums in Santa Barbara and across the nation. And as a child, I'd go into galleries with my parents or museums.
Oh, yeah.
And that's art appreciation. And then taking art classes, it is just as the music that we have tonight, the art that we have, it's a part of life, and it's the quality of life and the quality of the community. So
Yeah.
thanks for being a part of this, Rebecca. It's nice
Thank
to
you.
see you across the way. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next artist is Robert Voorhees.
Hi, Jan. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you all today.
Thank you for being a part of us. I always enjoy listening to what you do because you're our photographer and the interesting process that you do. So what subjects attract you to photograph, and could you tell us a little bit about this first piece?
The subject that I find most interesting are subjects with form, texture, and detail. Things like tree bark, patterns in sand at the beach, junk and debris. And a photographer that very much influenced my vision, Brett Weston, referred to subjects such as these as magnificent gorp. And so I enjoy seeing these things that most other people would not consider looking at. The image that you see here, Eucalyptus Scream, began as a pattern in the bark of a eucalyptus tree. And as I played with the image in Photoshop, made it into this abstract appearance that you see now. And this prompted me to think of the very famous painting Scream by Edward Munch, thus Eucalyptus Scream.
And is this tied to what's going on currently today that inspired you to do this? Or was it mostly that you look at objects so uniquely that you don't actually take the real photo? You always see something else with your artwork that you do.
No, it tends to be at the moment of seeing, I might visualize what the image will be when it's done. There are times I'll look at something and it's like I'm holding the print. It's finished. Others, it's more of a creative process and a evolving experience as I work with the image. So some of these come together reasonably fast. Others, there's a considerable amount of time and contemplation into what they evolve into.
So my second question for you is, do you have a preference for color or black and white images when you're doing your photography?
My training has me, I primarily visualize in black and white. This generally, at the moment of seeing, that determines how I'm most likely going to render the object. So this image that you see now, Ready to Howl, it was captured in color, but I had visualized it entirely as black and white. As I worked with it, the object was to create as much a considerable amount of mystery with this extraordinary rock formation, and ended up because I sensed this looked like more like a wolf or a coyote ready to howl in the evening, thus Ready to Howl.
Well, it's beautifully done and definitely very creative and unique to your style. What photographic equipment do you use when you do things like this?
I use a variety of equipment, and from full frame digital camera to vintage film cameras to plastic cameras that I find at thrift stores. And in those, I typically shoot expired film because the plastic camera is marvelously, there's so many unknowns that you cannot control. And so it makes it more of a fun experience using out-of-date film. Digital capture is easy. And so using a film camera is more deliberate, it's more thoughtful process, and it keeps me aware of the photographic process that I began many years ago.
Well, it's really nice to have you on and showing your art. I know that you're also involved with the Channel City Camera Club. And
No.
Putting up here, this piece is my favorite piece. And it says, what in your opinion is the most important step in the photographic process?
On this piece, here's an example of, I had visualized this initially as black and white. But as I worked with it, it rendered much more effectively in color. And but going on to the most important process in to me, the most important step in the photographic process to me is making a print. The print to me is the most difficult aspect. It's the most considerate aspect, because once it becomes a print, then it is art that somebody else can own. The digital image, the wonderful aspect of the creative opportunity that we now have with the digital darkroom. But the digital image is merely an image that a viewer can see. They do not own it.
Well, thank you so much for your insight, because I learn something every time I listen to you. And that's just a reminder when you're, as the audience, if you're at an art exhibit, the artists enjoy telling you about their process and their artwork. And so at this time, feel free to email any of us with questions that you might have or thoughts that you had during the interviews. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Jan.
We have one more person coming up to do the final interview, and then we'll have Joel and Tina end with Gravity. And it is Patricia Watkins. Hello, Patricia.
Hi.
Good to see you. Thank you for participating.
Thank you for the opportunity, Jan. It's very nice. So my name is Patricia Watkins, and I've painted for quite a long time on my own to begin with. And then in the 80s, I started taking some workshops, which of course help one to advance a lot faster. So I used to set up some still lifes and paint those in my large studio in San Diego. Like I said, a watercolorist, and in watercolor, you usually work from lighter color to darker color. And something that's really nice is you can paint with translucency or opaqueness using watercolors. I think I have quite a few techniques that I practice. And the first one is glazing, and I studied with Judy Betts, and she did a lot of glazing. That was her whole style in the beginning. So this painting is basically glazed. If you see the upper right corner, the blue, that's a little bit larger piece of glazing. And glazing means you put water and pigment on your brush, and you sort of float it very softly across your paper. You do not like scrub it in. That is a different effect. So for example, the platter, the background of the platter is black, and that is all glazing also, repeated layers. Glazing usually, it means that you put one layer down, you let it dry, and then you come back over it if you need to enhance color or make the color darker. And so most of this piece is glazed, some bigger pieces of it and some smaller pieces. So it took quite a while to do, actually.
Well, it's beautiful, and I also like the fact that you put the glass space in front for more to it.
Yes,
So,
it wasn't easy, but I was practicing.
I know it isn't easy. So my question is, what type of watercolor techniques did you use in these 4 paintings?
Yes, and so I talked about glazing here. There's 3 other ones that I use a variety of, and wet into wet, or negative painting or direct painting. So this, I'm going to show you a little bit of wet into wet, but it's over here on these I don't know that you could see this actually, on the smaller petals, the yellow and green ones,
right here
above the pot in the upper left. So it's a small space for each petal, but I would go in, I might wet it or do dry paper. Then I would add, let's say, the green, but I might not wet the whole little space, and then I might drop a little orange in beside it and let the orange dissipate or blend into the green. So I often use wet into wet, not usually for large shapes, but often for small shapes. And then there's a third way, which is negative painting. And if you could bring up the man. This is from Pike's Market, and I just laid color down, And then this particular style of negative painting, you go in after you put down your larger shapes and you paint between the shapes. Just so happens this is oranges and some other fruits, but you basically, I didn't go back into the first shape so much, but I would paint between the shapes, like the little pieces of green between the oranges to go darker. And where the garlic is hanging in the upper left, I painted around the garlic. You know, I did the whole sheet with color of the objects, the larger shapes, and then I would break into that larger shape with smaller shapes and eventually even smaller shapes until I ran out and I couldn't paint any smaller. So this is an example of the negative painting.
Yes.
Direct painting is the last one, but actually this one of Pike's Market is kind of directly painted underneath until I got into the smaller shapes and went into the negative painting.
Yes, and you really do show your technique because you're using your colors and the shadow, and then the negative painting, and it draws you into your paintings because you want to know more about what you were thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are your strengths in these 4 paintings?
I think my strength probably is in composition. A lot of my compositions are sort of complicated. Usually artists that paint representationally will have a focal point, or else they'll want your eye to travel around throughout the painting. This is the one painting of these 4 that definitely has a focal point, and that is the man. Because he is lighter, for one thing, with darkness around him, and he is a bigger shape of one color, which in this case is white. Let's put up Patio Beauties or any of those other 3 that we already did. You will notice that I kind of, in my composition, I want the eye to move around the painting, and often my compositions try to get the eye to go circular, in a circular motion, like coming up the bottom of the platter, up and around, behind the opium poppies there, back down. And the shadow will bring you even down lower behind the vase. And then that will go into the white, which goes into the pink, which circles back up to the platter. So that's one example of your eye circulating. Can you put Patio Beauties up?
Is that the bottom one?
Yes, I think, yes. Mm-hmm. So again, here, it's not as obvious, but I did it hoping to make the viewer's eye go circular again, coming in maybe from the right with that brown little dead twig going into the green, and then the pot coming down through the dark and into the bottom of the first platter and around the right edge of the second platter, and then that one succulent aiming to the left, which takes you back up. So it's not as clear a circular pattern, but it's basically, that was the idea. And the upper right corner is a little wet into wet in a large piece.
Thank you. Your last question is, how would you like your watercolor painting to evolve moving forward?
I would like it to be looser, a little sketchier, a little less planned. I'm kind of sometimes a workaholic and A-type personality, so it's hard for me to kind of, relax and maybe just paint with a brush and not even sketch it in. The one last thing I'd like to say is I did study color quite a bit, and I really love color. So that's why some of these are pretty colorful. And I like working now, especially with analogous color. things that lie next to each other on the color wheel.
I appreciate seeing the types and how you complement your colors in each of your paintings that I've viewed from you.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank you so much.
You're
It's
welcome.
been a fun evening listening to everybody. We have our final song with Joel and Tina. Hello, Joel and Tina, and they're going to sing "Gravity" by John Mayer, which I think is just so beautifully done.
All right. Hello. Are we up?
Yes,
Here we
you
go.
are.
Thank you so much, Jan, for having us.
Yeah.
And thank you to all the artists. You're all fabulous. Love your work. This one's called Gravity.
Gravity is working against me. Gravity wants to bring me down. Oh, I'll never know what makes this man. All the love his heart can stand. Can dream of ways to throw it all away. Oh, gravity is working against me. Gravity wants to bring me down. Oh, twice as much ain't twice as good. Can't sustain one half good. It's wanting more that's gonna bring me to my knees. Oh, twice as much ain't twice as good. Can't sustain one half good. It's wanting more. It's gonna send me to my knees. Gravity, stay the hell away from me. Gravity, sticking there and at me. Just keep me where the light is. Just keep me where the light is. Just keep me where the light is. Come on and keep me where the light is. Just 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 keep me where the light is.
Well, Joel and Tina, you made this a special evening and event. I hope you'll join us again. I love your music, and just so appreciate you taking this step with us. We're going to be.
Thank you.
That's just wonderful. Thank you for the choice of your work, and it's just special to have you as a part of our group whenever we do exhibit on State Street or at exhibitions. Thank you so much.
Happy to be a part of it. Thank you.
Yes, we are. Thanks.
Here we go. So we're going to open this up for the last 10 or 15 minutes by each of the artists of what you've heard or some of the audience that's in the background. The audience would have to unmute to ask the question, but does anybody have a question of any of the artists that
Little question,
are into the
Robert. I was wondering on the last photo, those shiny things that look kind of diamondish, what were they? Did you
Question
hear me?
for Robert.
They were all diamonds, Mary. I got lucky. I was walking around in Chicago and I found this wonderful stash of diamonds. And no, what I was walking around in Chicago looking for photo ops, and someone came out of the store and dumped a bucket of ice on top of a drain. And the light was striking it in a good manner. So I photographed it.
Did
And
you say water?
What was that?
Was it water? Is that what you said?
No, it was ice. It was ice.
Okay.
Ice
Yeah.
that somebody had dumped.
Very nice.
Individual came out of a store and dumped it on this drain. And so I photographed it. And as I said earlier, visualizes a black and white image. And it didn't work out effectively. So working with it in Photoshop, being that it was a drain, I created movement in the ice to make it look like it was flowing down the drain, and then enhanced the hues in it to bring out the as you refer to it, the diamond appearance, the highlights, to accentuate the highlights.
Anybody else have a question of one of the artists?
I'm really curious to hear about the collaborative process between Karen and Lynn, and wondering how that goes. That's such a, you know, really rich way of working, collaborating with another artist. And I'm wondering, do you guys get together and talk and brainstorm first? Do you work on it together at the same time, or do you pass the piece back and forth and take turns? Or really curious to hear what that process is like for you and what you've gained as an artist from working collaboratively.
I was going to say, Lynn, do you want to take that?
It's just like we're doing right now. We come up with an idea, we'll sit down, and then she'll do the painting and kind of give me a little glimpse of it, and then hands it back over to me, and I put the found objects on it, and it just flows.
Sometimes it comes back to me a third time, sometimes it doesn't. But I will say this, I don't know that I've ever met any other artist I could do this with.
No.
That's
and
that really,
it wasn't planned. It was because I needed a piece for the marine debris program. I'd sold the what was it called? The candy necklace. And we said, well, why don't we do a piece together? And it just happened. She painted this beautiful ocean that I just like, I looked at it and I went, how am I going to put trash on it? It was hard.
and I totally, completely trusted her to do it. And I said, just don't even worry about that. You do your thing. I know it's going to be perfect. And it was. It absolutely was. So
yeah,
there is
you have to really trust the other person when you're working like that.
Yeah, there's something that happens too sometimes when we get together and we just start talking about our work, and then it kind of triggers another idea, and then we both are like inspired at the same time. And so that's really exciting. But I also have to give a lot of kudos to Lynn, because I tend to have a lot of other things going on, and sometimes I put off my painting. We have a 4th painting in our series that has been in my studio for many months now, and I'm still trying to put the finishing touches on it. It's called
You've been hiking too much with your family, girlfriend. I've seen your Instagram posts. I know what you've been up to.
that too. So anyway, yeah, she's a very patient person, Lynn.
That's so cool. I love that you guys have been doing that. Amazing pieces.
It is pretty amazing. Yeah.
I would like to ask a question of Rebecca. Rebecca
Yes.
Martyr.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Rebecca. Yeah.
Hi.
I know you do collage and painting. There's
Yes.
painting mixed in with it. Yeah. So, and the trees look like were book spines or parts of book covers, were they? I don't know. And pages and things like that you use. You cut
Yeah.
stuff up and then you mix paint in with it. Could you
Yes.
talk a little bit about the process, like how it starts, how it evolves?
Well, I think I love layering. And first of all, I think that with all of our art, there's a history. There's history, whether it's conscious or not, and there's a narrative, there's a story. So I put these layers that are part of the piece that I cover up, and then I take away and I reveal them on the surface. So there's a lot of adding and subtraction. Yeah, and I think for me, it helps abstract the piece and give it some, it's almost like kind of what we've been talking about with nature and what's going on right now. It's like part of that, Elizabeth, is like the demons coming out. Like I think that's what's happening now with a lot of in the world right now. It's like we're excavating and making room for the beauty and the light. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Addition, subtraction, multiplication.
Yeah, right.
I get it. Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
I wanted to mention to Jan, I love those migrant paintings, Jan.
Yes, thank you.
And I wondered, I've just read a book called American Dirt by
I've heard of it.
It just is about migrants and some of the terrible things going on by Janine Cummins. And I would recommend, someone else in my reading group has it now. And when they're finished with it and our group is finished meeting, you're welcome to borrow it if you'd like to.
I would love to. I've heard it mentioned quite a few times over the summer as a really good book that's enlightening, hard to, difficult to hear, and yet just probably a bestseller for this summer. So I would love to do that. Thank you, Mary.
I especially like those two of yours. Very beautiful.
Yeah, and somebody just said I should go out and take photos of the migrant workers and do a series of it because of how it was captured. But I immediately thought of Robert instead. Thank you.
It's Patricia. Could I give Morgan a compliment? Something I like when I was looking at a couple of her paintings was her use of grays in with really bright color. Like the grays are usually tinted towards sort of a purple or whatever, but sometimes it's hard to work a lot of strong grays and a lot of strong color at the same time. And I thought she did that really well.
Thank you. That's very nice. It's always, grays are always a challenge, but there are so much actual gray in any landscape. True. That there's something that requires attention all the time. Thank you very much.
And you have to be brave with that, don't you? And you certainly captured it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a compliment from Morgan. The quality of the light.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other big challenge. I equally. Pardon?
How you capture the flow of the light.
Thank you. I'm very grateful for that. It's taken a lot of time to try and see and translate real light onto a two-dimensional surface. By the same token, I am blown away by all of you who abstract your subject matter. To me, to be able to abstract something and make the choices you make boggle my mind. I have all of the glorious examples of nature to choose from and to modify how I want, but to take those extra steps in concept and composition to do what you do and tear things out and abstract them so much more is something that I'm just awed by all of you.
And I appreciate all of you because you all inspire me. Dan mentioned about the Channel City Camera Club, and I'm no longer a member of that because photographers tend to focus so much attention on equipment.
Oh.
And, it's not about the equipment.
Mhm.
Equipment is merely a tool.
Mhm.
And so it's about seeing and visualizing what we're going to do with what we have captured, and as you all do. And so it's you all inspire me, and I thank you for that.
That's one of the things that I think we stand out for, the diversity of our mediums and styles. We have the realist still life and the realism of portraits or abstract portraits, moving to the abstract, what you see in Karen Haub's work, and then abstract realism. Some people are using that, and then mixed media, and even assemblages with our group now, and then the photography. It has an energy that we've been told, especially when we were on State Street, that people would walk in and they'd go from one artwork to another, and it was there. The energy, high energy from each artist is so obvious. So not only that, we have the different mediums. So people use oil, pastel, watercolor. Am I missing anything? But I have so appreciated you guys to walk through this with me and to have it where we have art in people's lives and our lives. Did we have any other last questions that you might have? Thank you. We are booked. If we walk through the fall into the winter, we have we're set up for SBTC in the spring at Santa Barbara Tennis Club. We're set up at the Jewish Community Center in June 2021. We're scheduled for the Faulkner Public Venue again, 2021 in September. And we're hoping to do a pop-up State Street in the fall. And we'll definitely get Tina and Joel to join us. And thank you so much for being a part of this, because it just made my life much more interesting. Less news, more art.
Yes. They did a great job at the Medusa.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Great job.